Each night, the television news brings us scenes of war and conflict from around the world. What we rarely hear are the people promoting peace in troubled areas. Good evening, I'm Gloria Penner. Tonight we'll introduce you to 4 women who've joined the front lines of peacemaking in nations racked with unrest. They have been in residence this fall at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice at USD. And we'll find out what brought them to San Diego, what they learned here, and what they hope to take back to their homelands to further their work. So joining me tonight are Zarina Salamat, who promotes nuclear disarmament in her native Pakistan, Shreen Abdul Saroor, who works on empowering women in Sri Lanka, Luz Mendez, who has played a key role in the Guatemalan peace process, and Christiana Thorpe, who is former Secretary of State for Education of Sierra Leone. And before we get to your individual stories, because I definitely want to do that, I'd like to ask you, I'll start with you, Luz, whether women are becoming an essential part of the peace-building process after being excluded for decades, maybe even centuries, from leadership roles in many parts of the world.
Yes, I think that during the last years, we have made important advances in order to have more women taking part in peace negotiations and at the same time in peace building. In Guatemala, at least we have a very good experience because women took part in the peace negotiations in 2 spaces, in the National Assembly of Civil Society as representatives of women's associations, and I myself, I had the honor to take part in the peace negotiations.
Oh, wonderful. Let me ask Shreen about that. What about in Sri Lanka, Shreen? I mean, how is it now that women seem to be moving into the peace process?
It has been very difficult task for us because we are just coming out of the war. Conflict is still there, and at the negotiation table it's only men, and we find it very difficult to put forward our gender-related specific issues. Particularly, women have undergone quite a lot of violence during the past 18 years of Sri Lankan war. Particularly, women have been used as suicide bombers and forefront fighters, and this is what we find it very difficult. Women have undergone quite a lot of sexual-related violence during the war, and so we are finding it very difficult to promote women's issues at the negotiation table.
Is that the case in Pakistan, Zarina? Do you find that it's very difficult to promote women's issues and for women to take a leadership role? Certainly you have.
Well, you see, we've been fighting wars with India for the last 50 years. We've had 3 wars and half our country is gone. So this militarization has given rise to fundamentalism. And that's had an impact on the patriarchal society, the male-dominated, and the women have suffered for that.
Any improvement? Do you see any improvement?
We are trying. There's a women's movement for their rights. We're also trying for democratization of the society. So there are 2 ways we are.
Let me turn to you on this, Christiana. One would think that, especially since you've been involved in education in Sierra Leone, one would think that through education we would see the ability of women to move more into a leadership position.
Yes, that's exactly what it should be, but pathetically, only 85% of our women are educated in Sierra Leone. So we have a big illiteracy problem. Traditionally, though, women are the peacemakers. So I think it's about time that that role becomes recognized at the national level. Women make the peace traditionally, and this war has brought that out. So more and more women are now coming out into peacemaking and peace building.
Okay, let's get into your individual stories, because each of them has a high level of interest and fascination. You're all leaders in countries where women suffer the loss of human rights, as you were mentioning, Shreen, especially in wartime. So let me start with you, Christiana Thorpe. You are a leader, as I said, in education in Sierra Leone. It's a small country on the west coast of Africa, just north of Liberia. First, briefly tell us about the unrest in your homeland.
Well, the rebel war in Sierra Leone lasted for 10 years. And during that rebel war, everybody in Sierra Leone felt it. It was a brutal and a bloody war. And the people who suffered most were the women and children. And where we came in, we have 10,000 girls who suffered sexual violence. And we have been working with them.
We do have some photographs of your work with the women and the children, so let's look at them now, and would you tell us what they show?
That one, that's me in the middle, and it was a march in support of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was set up by the international community and the UN, supporting that commission. This one, some of the girls that we have rehabilitated, they're doing tailoring, and incidentally, those machines were given to us by the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Oprah Winfrey, really?
Yes, I was on that show in March of last year.
I know she gives out automobiles. Yeah, I didn't know she gives out sewing machines, too.
We received 30 machines, and those girls are using those machines.
Okay.
And that's me. I was a nun about 20 years ago, and that's me and my family, my parents, and my brother when I took my final vows. So
because you were a nun, was that what started you in your work on behalf of women and children, or was it something else?
I think it started before that. As a young child, I was concerned. Where I grew up, only myself and my sister went to school. There were about 50 other girls in the area that didn't go to school. And when I come from school at the age 7, I used to call them and teach them. So I really started at that stage.
So what is it now that you are looking for in your hope for peace and justice and human rights in your country? I mean, you've been here now at our Institute for Peace and Justice. What is it that you want to see in your country?
Yeah, general peace, but specifically the girls that have been violated, for them to have peace and justice so that they can settle back into their communities and be women of their societies and be able to look after the children that they have received, that they have got out of rape. So that's when the demobilization took place. The girls were not given a look in. The boys, the men got everything, and the girls were left out. So we are trying to get them back.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your story. And now we turn to a different part of the world. We turn to Latin America. Luz Mendez is from the Central American nation of Guatemala, a country on Mexico's southern border. She's the president of the advisory board of the National Union of Guatemalan Women. So, Luz, what has been the human rights situation for women in Guatemala?
Well, since 1996, when the peace accords were signed, the political situation and the human rights situation improved a lot in Guatemala. For example, I grew up in a country where we didn't have opportunities to free speech. We didn't have the opportunity to organize freely. So I can feel the change in the political field. But unfortunately, in the economic field, we have not had any improvement. And let me tell you that the Guatemalan peace accords can teach a lot to the world, because the peace accords meant not only the end of the war, a war that lasted more than 3 decades.
3 decades?
Yes, but also these peace accords provide a platform to promote democracy, to promote socioeconomic development, to promote women's rights. So that's why women are so committed to those accords.
We do have some pictures of your activities that we want to show, so we're going to show them to the audience, and you can tell us what we're looking at.
Okay. Well, this is a picture where that was taken on International Women's Day, March 8th. This shows how women have been taking advantage of the new political situation. We have been asking the advancement of the peace accords, the due implementation of the accords.
Okay.
It shows how young women are gathering our women's organizations, and they are having a very active role. This is a picture taken in Patzum, one of the highlands town in Guatemala. They are indigenous women from the Cachiquel people, and they are struggling hard in order to have an equal voice in peace building in Guatemala.
So they're looking for equality.
Exactly.
Okay, and here's one more.
Well, this is a photo from the table of negotiations. As you can see there are only 2 women there. I am one of them. So in our peace process, as in many others, women were underrepresented.
I can see that. So how did you get to be one of the very few women at the peace table?
Well, I began an intense activism since I was a teenager. I was a student leader, then I became a member of big coalitions, I became a member of the women's organization, and I became a member of the political diplomatic team of the Guatemalan National Revolutionary Unity.
Thank you, Luz. So now we turn to you, Zarina. Zarina Salamat comes from the other side of the world from Guatemala. Her country is Pakistan, which lies between India and Afghanistan, and she was chairperson of the Pakistan-India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy in Islamabad for a total of 5 years. How did you get involved in the peace process?
Well, our movement for peace is really motivated by promoting bridges between India and Pakistan. As I told you earlier, that we've had 3 wars and lost half the country. So our forum decided that we must promote people-to-people contact, a dialogue between the common people of India and Pakistan, to show that we wanted peace. It was only the governments who were had their own vested interest in going to war. And
in looking over your biography, I had a sense that your life really changed.
Yes.
In what way?
My life changed. Since my husband died about 10 years ago, I felt that I had to put my mind to other movement, and I joined this forum, and I was made into an office bearer, and I found it very interesting, and I thought it really needed a lot of work on this movement. It was not being promoted as it should be.
We do have some photos of your work, so
yes.
Let's look at them and you can tell us what they're about.
Yes. Well, this is, we have joint conventions in alternate years in each country. We had one in Delhi and Lahore, Calcutta, then we had one in Peshawar, then in Bangalore, and this is one, the latest, it was held in Karachi, where the President Chairman of the Indian Forum is sitting on my left. Okay. So that's the panel discussion we are having there.
And here's another one.
Yes. And this is another photograph of Indian parliamentarians visiting Islamabad. India and Pakistan had strained relation for about 3 years, and we invited the Indian parliamentarians to visit Islamabad and gave them a grand reception. And
quite an accomplishment to bring them together to one table. And then this one?
And this is a photograph of children from Pakistan, which I have been organizing to visit Hiroshima. And there they are standing with the American children, there's about 4 or 5, and Indian children. And we are sitting with the mayor of Hiroshima.
Did you personally take any risks because of your work?
Well, on a couple of occasions, we've been attacked by anti-peace groups and rightist youth groups.
So you personally realize some danger.
Yes.
All right, so, well, then you have to start thinking, you know, when you're in those circumstances, what am I accomplishing? And what have you accomplished because of your work?
Well, we've been able to put pressure on the government, and it has worked at times, especially in 2001. There's a women's group that came from India. They came from all walks of life and called on the president and requested him to visit India and have talks with the Indian Prime Minister. You know, the main conflict in India-Pakistan is about Kashmir.
Yes. Yes.
So we were able to persuade the president to visit India, and the talks went off very well till the last minute when the Hawks came in and it all failed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we come to Shreen Abdul Saroor. She has been working with refugees and women victims of the ethnic war in Sri Lanka, the island nation just south of the Indian continent. So what is the situation? You started to tell us early in the program. What is the situation for women in your country? You were talking about them being victims.
Well, our conflict is kind of we are just coming out of the conflict, and women have unappropriately marginalized as widows and former cadres and women who worked at the forefront organizing women's movement. And even though the war is over, the conflict is still there, and we see children being recruited by the militants. So
we do have some photos.
Right.
So why don't we show them, and then you can explain to us what they show.
This is where we work with youth, bringing the two conflicting parties, the Tamil majorities and Sinhalese minorities, together, talking on reconciliation and rehabilitation issues. And the other one is also in the midst of the conflict, there is this 5% of Muslim minority from which I come. They have got caught and paid their price as well. So we work on resettling the internally displaced people back in their hometowns by using microcredit as a way of doing it.
Let's see. There's the last one.
This is a bit dangerous that we work with child soldiers who have come, who have escaped from the militant groups, and mostly we do these activities underground.
Let's learn a little bit about you personally. How did your personal experience bring you to this role of peacemaker?
Initially, I'm an internally displaced person in my country. During the war, there are about 800,000 people who have got internally displaced, and we are finding it very difficult to resettle those people. I come from north part of Sri Lanka, which is core to the conflict, and my interest is started with working at the refugee camps, and the organization I found, a women's development organization, now resettle the Muslims and Tamil communities together in different villages by using microcredit programs and awareness programs.
How are women pushing the peace agenda in Sri Lanka?
Particularly in the last 36 months, where Norway is mediating our peace process, and a lot of men sitting around talking about how to share the territory, how to share the money. It's women who have started talking about human security and just an equitable peace for all the communities. And it's women who are talking about all sorts of human rights violations that are happening under the cover of ceasefire, particularly child recruitment and abduction of people and political killings.
So let me ask all of you, in undeveloped countries such as the ones that you represent, has the climate changed for women that is allowing you as representatives of your nations to get so actively involved in the peace process? What do you think, Christiana?
Well, I think the good side of the results of the war, because women have suffered so much, and now they are giving voice to the suffering. We've had enough, and we need to do something. So more women are now coming forward that we are silent before, to talk about development, to talk about peace, and to make sure that we don't suffer again.
That sounds to me, Luz, as though what Christiana is saying is that women are coming forth. However, there must be something that's happening in some of these nations that is allowing women to come forth, that isn't suppressing them anymore. What about in Guatemala? Is that true? I mean, is there an actual encouragement of women to come forth?
Well, women have been actors in building peace in Guatemala. And we have, at the same time, taken advantage of the political spaces. However, as the economic agreements have not been implemented, poverty has increased in Guatemala. And it has brought the increase in delinquency and the increase in sexual violence against women. So this is really a big problem we have now in Guatemala.
You're saying poverty increases sexual violence against women?
Well, poverty increased the delinquency, and the delinquency is usually associated with violence, including sexual violence against women.
Zarina, that's the case in Pakistan too?
Yes, we have 30% of our population living on $1 a day. So peace really doesn't mean very much to them, nor does human rights mean very much to them. And there is a lot of cases where women are kidnapped and there's violence against them. And there's one special custom, which is honor killing, in which custom and religion seem to be mixed up. And women are being violated in name of religion.
Is that your experience too? Because you have talked about women as victims. Are they victims in the name of religion?
Not very much in Sri Lanka. It's generally it's the violence that we have got used to. 18 years of war has scattered our society so much, and the younger generation is becoming more and more violent. So that is something that we have found out in the recent past, that we have to work a lot on domestic violence against women.
I have to say that what you just said is kind of shocking, getting used to violence in a country. Christiana, does that speak to you and to your experience?
Yes, in fact, that is why now we have developed curricula in the schools to educate our children back to peace. Because we have 10 years of violence, and children who are now 18 only know violence, and we need to begin to teach peace. And we're trying to get into the communities and into schools with peace education.
Do you think, Zarina, that the greatest threat to gender equality is violence, the culture of violence? Is it politics? Is it legislation? What is it? What is the greatest threat?
Well, gender legislation can go a long way in improving the lot of the women. In our country, there are laws that are meant for rape, but they are changed to adultery. And the woman has the worst of it, and the man gets away with it.
All right, you're all going back now to your home countries,
yes.
And we hate to see you go. But what are you taking back with you, Luz? We just have a few seconds. What are you taking back that's going to help you in your work?
The strength that I have been feeling through listening the experiences of my colleagues at the IPJ will help me a lot to continue contributing to building peace, a sustainable and just peace in my country.
Institute for
Peace and Justice.
Okay, can you wrap it up for us, Christiana, what you're taking back?
It was really good. I'm going back now with energy, and also one program we did on negotiation. I've learned a lot more on how to deal in negotiation.
You're agreeing? negotiation.
And also the experience that we shared among us, talking to each other, also we have identified that each of us have something strong, and we are taking that strength back home.
That commonality is important, is it
Yes,
not?
that I've learned a lot from these three wonderful ladies, that women must come forward and work for peace.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have this evening. I'd like to thank my guests, Christiana Thorpe, Zarina Salamat, Luz Mendez, and Shreen Abdul Saroor. You can learn more about our guests and peace efforts in their home countries by visiting our website at kpbs.org. And we enjoy hearing from you. Write to us at the address on the screen. And tune in again tomorrow night when we'll take a look at the results of today's vote to fill the 4th district seat on the San Diego City Council. For KPBS, I'm Gloria Penner. Good night.